Okay, Jesse, we just got finished watching WWE Great Balls of Fire, the first of its kind, maybe the last, depending on how we feel about it. Yes, because the WWE is going to be like, hey, what do those two chumps from Australia think?
Well, if they did, they'd make better fucking programs, Stuart.
Well, I'm going to get started with the kickoff match because arguably it was one of the more athletically gifted versions of the night of any of the matches, arguably, which was Neville, the Cruiserweight Champion, versus Akira Tozawa. You're telling me not to, but I'm being trained by the WWE to do so.
It doesn't take much.
It's like, I'm seeing him in the match, and there was one moment where I felt sad for him when I'm like, this isn't working. Because he was on the ground, and he was like trying to get up, and he was like, and you see like no one's joining in, and I'm like,
Yeah. Or they'll join in, then stop like 3 seconds after he stops.
Thankfully...
Like he went to do the chant, and then he went to go climb the ropes, and he was hoping that people would still be with the chant when he's on the ropes, but they just stopped.
Well, thankfully, Titus has been helping him, because now that he's part of the Titus brand, when Titus heard him going, in the ring, he started hitting the mat in time with his chant, so the people started clapping, and then they heard what he was doing, so like, oh yeah, he's doing that as well, so they started...
Oh yeah, he's doing that dumb thing.
But I feel like
how Titus is actually helping.
Yeah, I mean, I felt like Akira has a horrible gimmick of just shouting. And we saw that promo, which is hard to believe that he did an entire promo of just shouting. But, I mean, I suppose most wrestling promos are just shouting. But Neville is just, I feel like he's great as champion here. But I felt that a lot of the air came out of the balloon once you realised that, if this is on the pre-show, it's probably not going to change hands if they want to make this worth anything. But anyway, so we get a lock-up to begin the match, and mainly this match consists of your usual flips and jumps that the 205 Live and the Cruiserweight division are known for. We do have Tozawa looking incredibly fast in this matchup, and Neville would eventually knock Tozawa to the ground and just constantly apply his boots. Now, Jesse, you've been a big advocate of Neville. How do you feel with him being used in this way?
I do like Neville. I don't know. The problem with it is that he hasn't got really any competition where he is. And they need to start, like, Austin Aries was great because, I knew he could actually wrestle. Not, like, disregarding how they fucking booked him.
As the commentator.
Yeah, like, he was great, but they did nothing with him, and they had a blow-up match, and nothing came of it. And now he can never do it again. So I'm like, well, that was your one chance of making the Cruiserweights interesting. I mean, I suppose Rich Swann is still there, but what has he fucking done recently?
Not much. I think they're just doing at least what they're trying to do is they're cycling through all the rest of the Cruiserweight division, and they're trying to be like, hey, do you guys remember any of these people? And most people are like, no. But so we get Neville with some good flying kicks, and Titus was trying to cheer up Tozawa because Tozawa was having a rough go in the match, so he was trying to pump him up and get him all excited, and I think that it's weird to see Titus in this capacity, in the fact that he's being billed as like a heel that's holding back Apollo Crews, but then you see him legitimately helping Tozawa. Yeah. Maybe it's going to have a match between Tozawa and Apollo Crews. I'm not sure. But it's good to see that there is a role for Titus in the company, and he's doing it really well.
Yeah, I don't mind what he's doing. It's better than trying to leech off a New Day.
So Tozawa climbed to the top corner to do a move, but Neville rolled out of the way, so we don't really know what it was going to be. And once Neville rolled out of the ring, Tozawa then did a flying headbutt into him. And once the action went back to the ring, we see the octopus hold, they were calling it, which was Tozawa's submission. Neville kind of misses, but we get a great combination out of that, of just move to move to move, from flip to flip, and ending with a senton from Tozawa. But Neville was once again able to roll out, and the commentators were billing Neville as not so much a heel, but that he had good ring awareness, and that was what was helping him here, because he always knew how close he was to the edge of the ring. So he would try and make it so that he was able to roll out. That being said, the non-heel comparison stops there because Neville immediately put Tozawa on the ring ropes to essentially nut the poor dude, and then he kicked the rope so the rope bounced up into his junk, and that was the end of Tozawa, and so Neville pinned him and then retained. It was better than usual and surprisingly decent for a kickoff match.
Yeah, probably I could think of at least 2 other matches that should have been replaced by that.
Was one of those... okay, first of all, are you happy that he retains the Cruiserweight Championship here?
Yeah, well, I'd rather him lose to someone, a bit better than just Tozawa with his stupid gimmick. Like, just anyone that comes along and actually, does something cool. Like, even just like a new guy that shows up and just beats him. Like, that'd be something. And
the thing is, if Tozawa did that, he would be over. But the fact that they've given him this dumb gimmick means that he's not a new guy to us anymore. He's the guy that does the weird yelling thing. So anyway, to start off the actual pay-per-view, we get Bray Wyatt versus Seth Rollins. And I made the comment that Seth was doing this weird SmackDown versus Raw game entrance when he was walking in, and it was very strange to see how he was coming in with that walk. But, eventually he gets to the ring, and it started in the lamest way to me, which was both the dudes were just pulling each other's hair. And I was like, huh? And then they did, Bray was eventually throwing around Seth, and he threw him into the steel steps, and they traded blows in the corner and that sort of thing. And once they got to the corner, Bray was able to take him up and do a superplex from the very top. We did get one move which I thought was decent, and I'll get into the the nitty gritty after I run through this down. But Bray Wyatt was able to spike Seth's head on the ringside, and I thought that looked pretty decent. Well, at least it looked like it had an impact to it. And Seth and Bray were trying to suplex each other towards the end, which ended up with Seth kneeing Bray in the face. Later on, Bray would catch one of Seth's kicks into a Sister Abigail, and Seth would escape that. And after a quick exchange, we get Seth during the, I think it's called the Falcon's Arrow, I think they were saying. He did the Falcon's Arrow on Wyatt, which, it's a good show of strength to see Seth Rollins able to lift Bray Wyatt and do that move. And once again, the action goes to the corner, and Seth was climbing to the top and he got hit by Bray. Bray was telling the audience that he is what a god looks like. And
that's what it looks like, everyone.
Secret's out. There was an exchange of fists, which would eventually lead to Bray Wyatt going out of the ring. When Seth would go to try and get through the ropes, Bray would hit Seth in the eye with his thumb, which would then cause enough of a sort of stun. I was going to use a fighting game to say a stun state to get fucking Seth into the Sister Abigail finally for the pin. Okay, so with the exception of that one move, that's head spike into the ring corner, I could give less of a fuck about this match. I know that Ryan is a big proponent of Seth Rollins, and I don't hate the guy, but this is not the kind of match for him because, well, for starters, Seth shouldn't be a fucking face at all. I feel he does his work better when he's a heel, when he's a little shit heel.
Yeah.
But, Bray is just such a boring character to me at the moment, so that when you get a boring Seth Rollins face and a boring heel, you're like, okay, well, why am I here? And despite that head spike from Bray and the Falcon's Arrow from Seth, I didn't see anything here that was really worth noting. And I found myself not even caring about the feud here, so I'm like, well, why is this match happening? And I could understand why this opened up the show. Kind of felt that if they didn't have the name power that they kind of have at the moment, that they would be on the kickoff show.
Yeah, I feel like Bray Wyatt, his entire gimmick is just tired. I feel like it ran its course with that dumb fucking Randy Orton match. I feel like that's when it should have ended, and he should have moved on to something a bit different. But it's just the same gimmick he's had since he started basically, and it's just it's not the kind of gimmick that you can keep going.
Well, here's the deal. Even Undertaker became the American badass for a bit. And what did that do? It made people want the old Undertaker back. So Bray Wyatt needs to go away before he's missed. And at the moment, he's got no Wyatt family. He's by himself. He does the same... Like, there was the promo that he did in the desert. And I was like, I don't know what the fuck this was about.
Shit. It's not some Warrior promo.
And so, yeah, and then, but with the Ultimate Warrior, at least he was saying shit that you'd be engaged with, that you'd...
at least it was interesting rubbish.
Yeah, but like fucking Bray's just like going on about his usual cult shit, and he'd talk about how, he'd talk riddles within riddles within riddles, and it's just like, well, what are you actually doing to build this match? And it's like, nothing.
If Bray Wyatt went away for like maybe 3 months, like that'd be the fastest, like the least he could go away for. And he came back as like some stupid comic book villain. That'd be cool. He just comes back and like, yeah, it's in his eye.
I feel that
the cult leader.
I feel like Bray Wyatt is too established by this point, having been there for like, well, more than 3-4 years even. He's too established as a character to just disappear and then come back as someone completely different.
Because his gimmick is so old, like the style of it is such like an older style gimmick that like you need to go back and just reinvent it somehow, but you can't because it's the fucking modern product. So it's like, well, this really weird plot place where like his gimmick is old, but he can't change it.
Disappear for 4 months and then come back as the leader of Sanity as they come up to the roster.
That would be cool. Like he leaves and like you just see like they start like say he just starts winning over and over again and like no one knows why, and then they come up to the main roster and then like Bray Wyatt's behind it all. That'd be cool. Yeah.
And it's like that would be how you can finally inject that extra bit of life into the character. And sure, it would only last for a little bit longer, but he's already dead now.
Some dumb shit of like Orton and fucking, I was gonna say Nux, but it's not Nux. And Luke Harper and Eric Rowan, like them like fighting Sanity.
Yeah, exactly. We could have
like a Survivor Series match would be cool.
The old family versus the new family, essentially.
Yeah.
If you want to see how you do a promo, though, we get the Hardy Boys promo next. And that was like a whole bunch of fun. Like, I mean, we get your little hints from Matt that he's like, yeah, I know what you guys like. I know like you like the broken gimmicks. I'm going to throw out a word every now and again. Like, I saw the crowd immediately pop and get hype when he was just like, and I was watching it and it was delightful. And then everyone was just like, yay! So he knows that even though...
The idea that it takes like a single word to make the audience like applaud them.
And he might never ever do the gimmick again, and he has
just references now. That's all you need.
And it's like he's established that broken character to such a level that just a reference or just doing a motion with his hand will cause delete chants. We got a Brother Nero chant in the match that would come up later, but when the Hardys were just doing promos, they felt like it was natural. When Jeff came at the very end and he's just like, we're always making history, and we're like, breaking through limits, and he's like, we break bars.
Yeah.
And it was like, that was cool. And I was like, that's your good, fun wrestling promo. And it was...
They changed the thumb thing to like a thumbs down. It's like,
yeah. And I was like, well, that was good. And I was really impressed with that. This is going to be a point of contention between the both of us, because I feel like I'm going to perhaps look at this with a little bit more of... well, let's just say that I know how you feel about Enzo Amore and Big Cass, which was our next match. So Enzo Amore versus Big Cass begins with Enzo coming out after we get this promo package of their friendship coming to an end. And the first thing that I noticed was there was a lot of support for Enzo. The crowd was fucking crazy, and I think I saw the most signs pop up all night that were just pro Enzo.
Like Team Enzo and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, and I was like, well, shit, even though this might be not what I'm particularly into, the crowd is really fucking into this angle.
Well, it's WWE crowd, right? So, like, they're there for the gimmicks, and that's all Enzo is.
And you know what? That is completely true.
Like, it's a very strong gimmick, and he's very good in the mic. Like, his speeches could do a bit of work, and they go on for a bit too long, but I feel like that was just because they need to fill for time, because, spoiler alert, that match didn't last that long.
Also, spoiler alert, other matches didn't last so long either, so I feel like that's why we got a talking segment, and then we got an Iron Man match later, because it's just like...
Yeah, fucking hell.
So, Enzo comes out, and he cuts a promo, and we're talking like a long promo. He almost details all of the fucking song, where he's just like, hey guys, I'm gonna keep talking about Frank Sinatra's song, and it's just like, okay, I get that you like it and that you're meant to be like this New Jersey, New York kind of guy, so that's like the Italian stereotype that all of the Italian families love Sinatra.
It felt like a kid in the school is doing like he's doing his homework for like a drama class.
Yeah, and it's like, okay, you got...
just like, I have to make an entire speech about this song.
Enzo, can you come up and do a monologue about That's Life? Yeah. If that's what all the people say, I will. And it's like, that was the kind of level of promo that we got from Enzo. And don't get me wrong, he was very passionate about it, and the crowd was eating it up. But for me, I was just like, yeah, I get that the point of promo or even a debate or just having public speaking is to hit home your point again and again in different ways. But all he was doing was hitting the same point using more lyrics.
That should be like the song should just be like one part of his speech, and then go more into like him maybe.
Yeah. And it's like, don't get me wrong, I get that when he was just like, oh look, the song fits me perfectly, and then he went through like, oh look, April, and you know, going through all the months and everything. He was trying to make it fit in with the song, and I can appreciate that, and I feel like when I said my main point of contention is going to be with you earlier, I feel that Enzo is one of the strongest mic workers, but he's just not saying anything that I particularly care about.
Yeah, well, it's weird. It's weird because I don't like him because what he says is just the same thing, or it's just rubbish. But like, he gets over, so I guess he's doing something.
The one line, and I've told you this before, just when we would like talk in between the wrestling reviews, because we occasionally do that. So I really liked his one line to Cass, where he's just like, "You're just a 7-foot catchphrase that I wrote," and it's like, that shows that if the WWE creative wrote that, that's great. If he wrote it, it's even better. But I haven't heard something like that level of a zing in a promo for a long time. And it's like, it was good. But anyway, we get lots of support for Enzo in this match. And we get Big Cass's new theme showing up, which is shit. So... it's like, what if Kurt Angle's theme was trash? And I feel like they've done this intentionally because they're like, hey, guess what? We don't want to give him the same song anymore because that song's fucking over. And so, let's give him a shit theme. And so, this match goes exactly as you imagined it would the minute they announced it, essentially. Which is, Enzo is unable to do anything. He's unable to inflict any sort of damage.
To be fair, Cass can't do anything either.
But, yeah, but...
He just sort of throws him around the ring a bit.
And that's the biggest problem here. It's like you have a mic guy versing a guy that isn't able to go in the ring for a very long time and is very basic with his work. And so it's like, why did you do this? I mean, don't get me wrong, I get having a 7-foot dude as a wrestler, that's something that wrestlers... You get the look and you get that intimidation.
You start with the look and then you build upon it, you just leave it at the look.
Well, yeah, like...
What if fucking Diesel couldn't wrestle?
Exactly, it's like... People would say that, oh yeah, Diesel was very basic, but everything he did was well. He did it well, and it was crisp, and
it was,
like...
There was an actual move there.
Yeah.
Like, just throwing people around and hoping that was over.
And it's just like, I feel like Cass is decent with his promos. He needs to work on, just a little bit, but he's definitely no Enzo, so all we get from this match is just neck ringing from Cass in a sort of rest hold. We get the asshole chant, and we get Enzo looking weak, which is good for Cass. But yeah, Cass just didn't let Enzo do anything. He didn't let him get up, and Big Cass would have eventually gorilla press throw Enzo, out to the ring where Enzo would almost get the 10 count, but he just makes it back in at 9.5. And then big boot, 1, 2, 3. And it's like, okay, well, this is...
How does this feud end? Like, how does people go away from this and be like, yeah, that was worth anything?
So here's the deal. This feud ends. The only way it can be done with any form of success is if Enzo disappears, because then they're like, okay, well, Cass is at least a heel, so we have some heel momentum, and the crowd would fucking hate him. So we can put him against people that we want to make faces, and then all of a sudden, we've got ourselves a new face, because everyone hates Cass that much.
Yeah.
And so, for Enzo, he's not going to get anything out of this. Because
unless Enzo comes back after disappearing and he's actually, gotten good at wrestling.
Maybe
what are the chances of that happening?
Maybe Enzo's going to go to the cruiserweight division, because it's like, I don't see him going...
That'd be cool. He could fight. He can lose to fucking another man that's tall.
Yeah, he can lose. Yeah, he can lose to Neville. It's great. At least we'll have someone new for Neville to beat.
Even though he could just show up and be... Oh, whatever, man. fucking damn it.
So, we have the 30-minute Iron Man match between the Hardy Boys and Sheamus and Cesaro. Now, it is the very first Iron Man tag team match, and it's going to be for the WWE Raw Tag Championships. What is your thought on the Iron Man match in general, Jesse?
I don't really like having the multiple pins. Just in general, I had the same problem with those fucking best of 3 matches back in the day. It feels like it should be over with the pin, because then it just creates a false finish. Well, an intentional false finish. And what if the crowd doesn't... because the crowd's stupid, right? I always feel like the crowd is stupid, so they wouldn't understand it's not the end. So that's always my biggest worry with it.
So here's the deal that, I think is one of my biggest complaints about the Iron Man match. And it won't be in regards to this one. But my biggest problem with the Iron Man match and the, as you said, the 3-count bouts of old is, immediately that this is going to go to the bet. One's going to get 1, the other person's going to get 1, and it's going to come down to who's going to break the tie.
Unless wants to heal, then who knows, right?
Yeah, and so it's just like, okay, well, in order to make both teams look good, you can't steamroll someone. So it's just like, with the very few exceptions of some of the Iron Man matches, where it would just be no one will get a pin until the last 5 minutes or so, and then they'll just keep duking it out, and they just won't be able to get it. It very rarely feels like a proper use of time. It feels like it's all just, okay, well, this is all going to be filler until we get to the go home part of the match. Yeah. And that's a problem that I have with the Iron Man match. And I think, judging by how you voiced your opinion then, that might be a similar thing, because it's just they're not...
It just makes the match go for too long. And especially if they're oh man, gotta have an exciting finale, so we can't really do much with the rest of the match.
I will say, however, in regards to this Iron Man match, they said that it was the very first tag team Iron Man match. And... when that happened, I was like, oh, we're going to see something maybe decent here. But, my hopes did go down a little bit, because I was like, well, they did say that there was going to be a very, the first Money in the Bank women's match as well, and that wasn't so historic. But, so anyway, immediately, we get the first fall to Sheamus in what they said was 16 seconds from the brogue kick. And I was like, okay, we're starting things off like this, are we? And so... there's a lot of stuff that happened in this match, but the cliff notes were that Jeff tagged in and we got immediately a Brother Nero chant. So it's just okay. And then just to, further add to it, when Matt smashed Sheamus' head on the side of the ring, the crowd chanted delete. So Sheamus would eventually carry Jeff, and Cesaro would jump off the corner, pushing his head to the mat, which would cause Jeff to be pinned. And that would make the teams 2 kneel. And I was like, okay, this is interesting. They're not trading 1 for 1, which is what I usually find boring about that.
Yeah.
So I was like,
I liked the pins at the start, because it sort of it added the whole tension to it.
Yeah,
it has the Hardy Boys just constantly chasing them down.
Yeah, and it woke you up because you're like, okay, I'm here for 30 minutes. I've got to pace. I've almost got to pace myself while I'm watching this because it's like, I know that, and it's the same with the crowd. They're like, okay, we're going to be getting here, but no matter what, we're here for 30 minutes. So I don't want to get all my cheering and all my hype out of the way, only to be left on the down. But you go through it, and something that I did see is the crowd, especially towards the later half of the match, they were really into this. They were on their feet and everything. Yeah. So Matt would come in and he would bounce Cesaro's head off the top rope turnbuckle and then in the middle turnbuckle, and he would bounce it from the middle to the top, from the middle to the top, and the crowd was really happy with that. And after constantly doing that for a long time, we would get a pin attempt from Matt, which would fail. So it was like, oh, okay, so they still didn't get a pin. We then got a poetry in motion a little later, and Jeff would hit the twist of fate on Cesaro for the pinfall. And it's like, wow, they had to do two different things and in order to just, make that pinfall happen. So they were really making it look like the Hardy Boys would have to work if they wanted to make this comeback. And even later on, Cesaro would tag Sheamus in, and then both the Hardys would double suplex Sheamus, and Cesaro had to run in to quickly break the pin, and so even then they didn't get another.
I will say I did enjoy all of the the tag team moves, with the double man moves. It really gave me the nostalgia of back when there were actual dedicated tag team. And it wasn't just let's just throw these two solo guys together.
Yeah, which is ironic because I feel like that's what their plan was for Sheamus and Cesaro.
Yeah. I mean, they're good as well, but they just don't do as much. I feel because it's always just let's help you get your finisher, let's help me get my finisher, and all that sort of stuff. Yeah,
so we would get Jeff using Matt's back as a stepladder to run and then jump on Cesaro, and so Cesaro would then get a point for a count out because both the people like Matt and Jeff were on the outside of the ring, and something that I wasn't aware of as it was happening is, both of them were given the count to 10, and then, Sheamus and Cesaro made it back to the ring, and so while the other two were out there and making their way back, it's 10, so we're going to give another point to Team Cesaro, and I was just like, so now it's got the 1-3, and I was like, oh man, this is going to be interesting to see how they try and make this look like, without burying the Hardys, essentially, without making the Hardys look like they're too old to go up against this new tag team or anything like that. But yeah, Cesaro then would suggest to Sheamus, hey, we should take our time with this. We're 3, they're 1, so if we take our time, we can just, wait out the clock, essentially. And so Cesaro just started to, attack Matt outside the ring, and Matt was able to then hit the side effect on Sheamus once he ran back into the ring for the pin attempt, and Cesaro would attempt to submit Matt, but Jeff was able to break it before the submission would happen. And we get that really cool looking pin by Jeff and Matt. How Matt would, how Jeff would use his legs to hold down the pin after coming off with the slam, and it was just man, that was cool. I've not seen that, and it was cool that's just something that they did in this match, and I was like, that's a really cool way to get the pin attempt, and once again, it's showing the skill of the tag team division and how they're able to work on the fly. And this is obviously not the Hardys' first tag team match, so they have that chemistry together as well. Then we got a very cool looking tornado DDT from Matt Hardy to Sheamus, and Matt would then do a moonsault on Sheamus. Would then get a twist of fate to Sheamus from Matt Hardy, and the double jump maneuver from where Matt was on one side and then Jeff was on the other side, and they just jumped down. I think that's where Matt cut his eyebrow, but I'm not exactly sure, but holy shit, it was piss and blood. I mean, it was everywhere. But they did get a pin off that, so, I mean, arguably, it was worth it to see, like, the impact and all the blood coming down, and it's like, okay, we still got the pin. So it's like, oh shit, we're catching up, we're like 3-3 now. And then Cesaro would come in at the very end to steal a quick pin while they were all, like, tied up and everything.
And then he would run away and then have
Jeff,
like him down.
And then it was like they would run out, and Jeff managed to get him back into the ring, or Cesaro tried to duck and weave back into the ring. He gets hit by Jeff, and then he goes down for the pin attempt, but he to no avail because the timer comes out, and it's just,
late.
And it's like
they were doing the count as it goes down to 0. It's like, that's the end of it.
And so, I mean, we get our final Iron Man match score of 3 to the Hardy Boys and 4 to Cesaro. So Sheamus and Cesaro retain. And I was like, man, that was a lot better than I was expecting. What do you think, Jesse?
Well, there were still points where I was just like, this is just sort of dead air a bit.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it sort of did fit with, like, the storyline of the match of, like, well, they're trying to just delay things, so it kind of makes sense why they wouldn't be just doing shit. There was this one point where they're about to, like, one of the Hardys was out of the ring, and they're about to win by, like, get another point by counter, and then they just push him into the ring, and that just, I guess because they were being cocky or something like that, but that didn't really fit them, especially because they're just about the winning. I know, that's like my only real gripe. Like, it was long, but it was fine because there was stuff to sort of keep you entertained, like, you know, spread throughout. It wasn't just all, like, loaded at the end. And the ending was good enough to be a nice finisher. And
arguably that might be one of the better matches of the night. Especially it had a lot of everything. And while there were certain really cool things to come later...
It was traditionally good.
Yes. Unlike our next match, which was Sasha Banks versus the Raw Women's Champion, Alexa Bliss.
Let's just say.
It's...
Oh, God.
It was something. It was, maybe my issue here is that I did not give a fuck. Like, they tried here. I feel that they really tried, but I was just so disinterested with this feud and the people involved. It was like earlier when I was like, I just can't get into Seth and Bray. It's just that same scenario. I'm like, I can't get into this. And don't get me wrong, Alexa did a really cool dislocating her arm kind of spot thing.
But was wasted on this match.
Yeah, and as I was saying to you in that match, Jesse, I was like, why didn't they save this for an angle where she was just like, oh, I just fucking broke my arm? If she has
and
this...
and then have her come out, but like, oh, I didn't actually break... It'd be cool if, she had the money in the bank and like, oh, I broke my arm, and then she comes out, like, you just broke an arm though, and like, she didn't though. Yeah, she could like have it like, oh, I can't defend I can't defend my title this week because I've got a broken arm, so you can verse this person in my place though, and then, you know, blah blah blah, and then, you know, have her come out and attack through the cast and then reveal that her arm was fine the whole time. Some wrestling stuff like that, but anyway, there is zero care for this match for me. And so even though there was like, oh man, that was a good net break move to the knee that she did, or, oh man, that was a decent suplex, it's like, I tried. But it was like, I was mainly disinterested in this match. And don't get me wrong, crowd seemed... They were okay, they were not disinterested, but, you know, they weren't as hype as they were for other matches, and I suppose they'd just come after the Iron Man match, so it was like they'd already seen what they wanted to see, essentially. But, I mean, how does this end? Alexa should stay outside the ring to lose by countout? I was like, okay, well, that's dumb. Well, not dumb, like, I get the booking here. It's just... It just means that the match is pointless. Yeah, it's like, well, why did I watch this then? It's like, if the champion just sits outside the ring and pretends to get the count out, and then the person like Sasha just stays in the ring. It's there so they can have more excuses to be sassy towards their number 9.
I guess. And it's like, we got a couple of things in this match, but at the end of the match, Sasha would attack Alexa, but would be taken to the, you know, announcing table by Alexa herself in a sort of reversal situation. But Alexa would eventually be thrown off the ramp, and Sasha would do a knee drop from the announcing table, which was that was a really good move. I mean, it was like, holy shit, that's a bit dangerous. But I think the thing that says it all, and the way to summarize this entire match, is that Jesse complimented Sandman twice. Rather than, like, think or talk in any reference to this match. You complimented Sandman twice as a wrestler. And so I was like, okay, that's all. I need to remember this, because that's the caliber
Like when you're giving me so little that I'm like, you know what I need to think about right now? Sandman. No one should ever be thinking about Sandman ever.
It's true. And he came up twice. It was like, okay. So anyway, that ended. And we get Akira Tozawa promo with Titus, and Titus is asked by Tozawa, could he get a rematch? And Titus is like, hey, I'll try. You need to go get looked at by the doctors and take care of yourself. And then maybe Titus is upset that Akira Tozawa lost, but
Yeah. Okay.
I don't know. But anyway, that was once again more filler because of things to come. But we then get our Intercontinental Champion, Miz, with his Miz-tourage.
Fuck yeah, Miz.
Going up against Dean Ambrose. Jesse, what are your thoughts on this feud?
It's the best thing they've been doing with either of those two in a while, to be honest.
You know what? You say that, but Miz has been on a pretty good, like, entertaining streak this year, like, with the whole...
Yeah, but the problem is, like, if you're fighting, like, fucking...
John Cena,
you know that you're going to lose because you're the Miz. But if you're fighting fucking Ambrose, you have a chance. And, like, you can do some cool... Like, he's tearing up his marriage and shit. It's fucking great. It's the entire... Like, Ambrose was, like... He's much better to bounce off with feuds than, fuckboy Buckethead, so...
And luckily they're no longer on the same brand anymore, so there will be no more interactions of that. But, look forward to Battleground in the flag versus flag match coming up. Rusev versus John Cena. Welcome to the late 70s, early 80s. Nothing's changed. So Dean starts off hitting Curtis Axel, and then he runs back into the ring, gets a few hits in on Miz, and then runs outside.
Unstable.
And then hits Bo Dallas, and then runs back in. But this time, Miz is ready, and he kicks Dean, and goes for another. But Dean's able to reverse this one and get out. So, Miz attempts the swinging neck breaker. And we see what can only be described as when Dean Ambrose is running, Miz does the bison slide, which slides across the bottom of the ring and causes Dean to trip and flip. And, so I think you were the first to notice this, but Miz was good with his storytelling in this match because most of his moves were going for the legs or the knee because he was about to...
Well, I always notice when he's going for the legs because, that's when you know that the least submissive move in the entire history of wrestling comes out.
Yeah. So, we know that he's building towards the figure four leg lock, and for some reason Dean starts bleeding from his mouth. So...
Gingivitis.
Yeah, the horrible case of gingivitis. Dean reverses the skull-crushing finale into the dirty deeds, which it was a nice little spot, and I was like, okay, so is Dean going to pick up the thing here? No, because Maurice prevented the pinfall.
Yeah, it's great. I fucking love it. Whenever any manager just puts the fucking leg up on the thing, it's like, yeah.
That's how you do it, man. So we get a skull-crushing finale to the pinfall, which leads to Miz retaining the Intercontinental Championship.
As it should be.
Miz and the Miz-tourage continue. Is there anyone in Raw at the moment that should take that belt off him?
Well, we could have the old classic dissension in the ranks thing, like has happened to Miz the past 4 times.
Well,
I feel like that's where they would go, is have, like, not Bo Dallas, because, I mean, he's too much of a beta personality. But Curtis Axel, definitely, he could do it.
become IC champion again?
Yeah, man. Gotta do something with him, right?
Well, apparently not. But,
Yeah, apparently.
so, anyway.
The man has such a fucking legacy, and, like, let's do nothing with him.
We get Roman Reigns is going to be up next, and I feel like once they do that package where they're showing, like, look how fucking deadly this thing is going to be, the only way to view this match is in a very kayfabe sense, where you're just like, oh shit, how's Roman going to do this? And that was the way we chose to view this match, which made it a lot more enjoyable and a lot more fun.
You can view a Roman Reigns match and not get upset. Is just build him in your mind as actual Jesus.
Mm-hmm. So we get Braun Strowman.
Like, everything makes sense.
We get Braun Strowman versus Roman Reigns.
True black swordsman. In
an ambulance match. So Braun throws Reigns into a post, which causes Strawn to hit Reigns with stairs outside the ring. Not very much happening here. There weren't no count outs, so it doesn't matter. But we didn't get very much in-ring action, and to be honest, I wasn't sure that there was going to be anything that could be done in the ring if they had that ability anyway. So it's like, it doesn't matter that there was no count-outs here.
That's not what this is about.
This is about Roman becoming perhaps a heel.
Perhaps a murderer.
Perhaps a murderer. Not a murderer. We don't know how the night's going to go for Mr. Strowman.
He could have died of internal hemorrhaging.
So, we get the announcers saying, oh man, Roman's returned to the ring and he's done the Samoan drop and he's going he's getting the chair, and the announcers say he's going for his surgically repaired elbow. And I'm like, okay, that's not exactly going to bill Mr. Roman Reigns as the goody two-shoes, because he's attacking a man who got out of surgery with a steel chair, and he's like, yeah, well, fucking take this, mate.
This was the confliction of Roman Reigns, the true storyline.
You know what? I think we're going to get that.
What is the world making him become?
Yeah. This is going to be something interesting to talk about after we quickly run, and I will quickly run through the rest of it. So, though Strowman would eventually no-sell those chair shots, and would go to throw Roman, and will carry him at least halfway to the ambulance. But Roman was like, no, and he ran back into the ring. So that was a little earlier, but once, these chair shots came, Strowman ran up to the announcer table and he started to dismount it, and, of course the battling's happening, of these two titans clashing, and he goes to throw Roman through the table, but Roman gets out and fires some hard punches into Mr. Strowman. And when I say that, I mean that with every little ounce of kayfabe. So Strowman, throws Roman into the ambulance to repeat the same spot that they did previously. But the fights with Mr. Strowman go towards the ambulance, and they're like, oh no, Roman's going to have to fight to not go into the door. So Roman's struggling, he's getting pushed into the door, and he's like, no, I'm not going. So Strowman eventually has to get the backboard out of the ambulance. He then starts to hit Roman Reigns with that. Yeah. And they picks Roman up and throws him back on to the main stage area. Roman was able to get Strowman through the set wall, which caused that little lighting error effects that they would play through the night.
The intense flickering of as the Matrix is being destroyed around them.
And the match would eventually go back towards the ambulance. Strowman would be beaten by Roman for a bit, and Roman would go to finish him off with the spear, and Strowman got out of the way, so fucking Roman went flying into the ambulance and had the doors closed on him. And so Roman lost.
Yep.
However,
he lost the battle, but did he win the war?
I'd like to say he did. Because Roman then attacked Strowman, threw him into the ambulance, threw the driver out of the ambulance, sped away in the ambulance to the backstage, where he looked in the mirror and said, It's time.
It's time.
I can't beat this man. Everybody hates me. This man keeps coming back when I do beat him. Even if I did beat him, most likely he'd be back. If I had to come back to work after this ambulance match, then he was still going to be here. How can I get rid of this problem? And he had a pretty final solution to that, which was, I'm going to reverse the ambulance at full speed into a trailer. And, yeah, I'm going to fucking collapse the back of the ambulance and cause it to crumple. And then they'd have to get the fireman there. And in the interim of getting the fireman there, we got a Kurt Hawkins versus Heath Slater match, which was mainly fucking...
Well, so Heath Slater won that, let's just...
He did.
Let's not discount.
He won off-screen, but he did win.
Dude, he has kids.
He does.
He needs this job.
So, I mean, Heath Slater, he was the second main event at fucking Great Balls of Fire. But the firemen eventually do show up, and they use the jaws of life on the door of the ambulance to get Strowman out, and he is all butchered and bloody, and he is not letting anyone take him on a stretcher. He's like, I'm going to power through this, because I'm a supposed monster heel? And he's like, no, I'm not.
Power through this because it was in the script to do so.
Exactly.
A bit extra.
And so he was selling that quite a bit. He kept falling down, and he eventually makes it out. We get a couple of shots. When he turns around, I'm pretty sure that's the shot that they're going to use in future packages.
I like him, like using the wall to make himself stand up, and the blood smearing across it. Yeah, and it's like one of the things I've been enjoying about the Roman Strowman feud, is they've been doing a lot of dumb wrestling shit that I love. Like flipping an ambulance, smashing through an ambulance door. Man, it was all building up, okay, well, we're going to do that ambulance match then, and it was fucking, it was a great payoff to the end of the match. And even if I talked about this in a sense where I'm just not trying to kayfabe it out, it was entertaining as fuck at the very end of that, just to see what would happen. I'm like, oh, man, that's cool. We haven't seen something like this in a long time. Okay, so I have my own theory about this whole thing.
Right.
The way that they bill Roman as a face, but he's actually a heel. They know that they're going to get him to be a heel, right? That's all just so they can get him to do actual heel shit like this and still be considered a heel. It's because, we want a heel to do all this crazy bullshit and be hated for it, but it's too cool, so people will be, cheering for him for doing it. So if we make him, completely unlikable, and then he does it, then maybe then we'll get what we want.
And you know what? I reckon if you want to ever make Roman Reigns popular, you got to turn him heel first. You got to make him do some heel stuff, or at least be perceived as a heel by the general audience, so that they can start getting behind what he's doing and once they start actually hating on him in the way that wrestling intends, once they start hating on him as a heel, not as a person, then they can slowly build him up to be like, oh, well, that was it. Remember when he did that heel stuff? Remember how he was in that feud?
I don't know if they'll get that far, though, to be honest.
The damage might be done.
He's not as bad as John Cena, but he's still pretty bad.
But I mean, if we look at this dude in terms of as a heel, and we look at this dude's resume as just from being... I consider him maybe... And this might be where I'm wrong. I consider him a modern-day heel in the fact that you book him as a face, and you have him arrogantly say all the face things, because they we looked at the John Cena effect, and everyone hated him. And so they're like, well, what
So he made John Cena again.
Yeah, and so it's
turned him into a heel, so everyone hated him.
And so it's we're going to put him in factions that will get other people over. Everyone likes Strowman now. And it's
even though he does nothing.
Yeah, and everyone's like, well, I can't wait for Strowman to beat Reigns. And it's what fucking world would anyone have cared about the Big Show 2.0 if not for this feud? And it's if you look at him on paper, he's been in a main event with Triple H at WrestleMania. He's been in a main event with Brock Lesnar. He retired The Undertaker. And it's that's a heck of a list to have already. So, I mean, he has the potential to
Do you
be...
think they're going to do like a whole switcheroo where they're going to turn Roman into the face and make Strowman the fucking heel?
Roman can only ever become a face if the crowd's behind him. And...
will that day ever come soon?
That day will come when somebody is more, like, hated than Roman. So the day that John Cena tries to, parade and cheer...
haven't they tried that already?
As far as I can remember right now, Roman Reigns, after the hating effect, so we're talking about when, Roman Reigns has turned into the hated person that he is with the WWE audience. Yeah. He has never come into the same ring as Cena for a match, or at least in a pay-per-view capacity. They haven't had a feud together.
So if that ever happens, they're trying to flip the switch.
If Roman Reigns goes up against John Cena, then people are going to have to sit there and they're like, I have to be on one side of this fence. Because nobody's going to be no one's going to be disinterested in that. Because everyone's going to hate that. And everyone's going to be like, but what do I hate the least about this? And so...
Okay, whose match was better? John Cena's ambulance match or Roman Reigns' ambulance match?
Roman Reigns, because it's like, when I think of John Cena and Ryback, I think of Ryback doing stuff...
I'm forced to think of Ryback, and that's just distasteful.
You know what? Yes, you're right. But it's like, I think of what Ryback did, and it's like, Ryback and Cena is like if there was two Strowmans in the ring that didn't want to sell for one another unless it was advantageous to them. And it was just like... So, you know what? I prefer this ambulance match, especially the ending.
Yeah, it was good.
And you know what? I think I prefer it more than the next match, the main event.
Oh, shit.
Which was Samoa Joe versus the WWE Universal Champion, Brock Lesnar. Now, this is going to be interesting. At the very start of the match, when they're announcing Brock Lesnar's name, Joe jumps him before the bell rings. And we get a fucking table spot from Joe to Brock before the bell rings. I'm like, wow, they're not pushing Joe so much as, like, these guys are both heels. The crowd and Jesse do not like Brock Lesnar because he's not there enough to be liked. He's not there enough to... People feel gypped.
He doesn't do anything.
Yeah, exactly. People feel gypped that he is their champion. And so even though Samoa Joe's doing all this heel shit, it's like that what I was talking about with Roman and Cena. They're just, even though Samoa Joe's doing all this heel shit, they're like, I'm willing to put up with it because I want someone to take...
It doesn't help that Heyman is pushing him like a face.
Yeah, because like Heyman's there and he's just like, this guy is the closest to being worried about Brock losing that I've ever been. So it's just like, okay, well, that's a big statement to make. And it's like, okay, and then they've been pushing Samoa Joe that, oh yeah, he's choking out, or at least attempting to choke out Brock Lesnar on Raw. So it's like, oh wow, so they're really going with this. Lesnar would get into the match, and then the bell would ring, and we're like, okay, so Lesnar's already hurt. So, what does this mean? It means that if Joe wins, he does win, and he gets the massive boost from becoming the WWE Universal Champion. But at the same time, it's going to be a tainted victory. He's not going to win clean. So already it's like, okay, we're not off to the best start here. We're not going to be building up... Yes, we are going to add a little notch to Samoa Joe's gun, if you will. He's going to have like, okay, I took out Brock Lesnar. But it's going to be like, yeah, but you didn't exactly do it in the most clean way, did you? Lesnar would then, show Samoa Joe what real Muay Thai kicks look like. Or at least Muay Thai knees. I was laughing when, I forget who it was. It might have been Corey Graves, it might have been Michael Cole, but somebody said...
They're real Muay Thai kicks.
Yeah, that Samoa Joe was doing real Muay Thai kicks, or Muay Thai knees. And I was just like, okay, sure. And then when I saw Brock Lesnar do the same thing back, I felt like it was Brock Lesnar saying, okay, this is how you do these knees if you want to do them. And we get Samoa Joe dominating most of this match, which is... It makes sense because he had jumped Brock at the beginning of it. So he was more ready to go, if you will. And he did a lot of punches to Brock Lesnar in the corner, bringing Brock Lesnar down. And Brock Lesnar would have stayed down if not for the 3 suplexes that he proceeded to give Samoa Joe. So, this brings up perhaps...
I feel this won't be like in my other matches, but then it was exactly like his other matches.
And that's what I was about to say. This would be where some of Jesse's gripes come from, saying Brock Lesnar's doing the same match that he always does. And then, in another surprise twist, we get Samoa Joe doing a low blow to Brock. And it's like, okay, so... And the crowd's like, yeah, you can do it, yeah, come on. And it's just like, what is this fucking match? I was just confused. I was like, we're booking Samoa Joe as this heel, this aggressive person that's willing to do anything that he can. And he's the face just because people want somebody to take a belt away from Brock Lesnar. And it's like, no one is happy with this situation that Brock has the belt, but at the same time they're willing to be like, oh yeah, fucking do all the heel shit you want, just it's fine, do all the... I don't care how you get it, you're going to show up on Monday and be like, I beat Brock Lesnar, the crowd's going to cheer, even though they're going to show the nut shot like 20 times. They're like, yeah, I fucking did it, I'm great. So anyway, we get the Coquina Clutch happening. I don't know.
A lot. Happens a lot.
It happens, yeah. They're trying to say, okay, this is the move that almost put Brock away. So, like...
Real 80s fucking booking.
I said to Jesse at one point, I'm like, oh, okay, I got this. What's Brock's finishing move? And it's like, the F5. And it's like, yeah, and then you visualize how that happens, and then you see how...
And then you look at the Coquina Clutch.
And you're like, okay. So Brock would soften him up with a further 6 suplexes. And Joe would then reverse the F5 to a Coquina Clutch, which would be reversed to an F5, which would go to a pin for 1, 2, 3.
We did it.
I don't know how I feel.
Is the right word nothing?
Like, I don't feel... Yeah, it might be nothing. I don't feel disgust. I don't feel overjoyed. I feel nothing. I'm like, that match, all I feel is that was wrong.
Yeah, well, the match was booked well. I liked the actual different promo from Heyman. Mm-hmm. I liked how they were actually taking him seriously, and I liked how Brock Lesnar was like, "Oh, I take you to suplex shitty, bitch," and then it just ends with, "Oh," and then the same thing that you always see happen. So it's like, what's the point of being different if it's gonna be the same?
Well, it's like Joe. If he lost, it would have hurt him. But now he lost after doing every dirty trick in the book as well. Yeah, so it's just like...
He's just gone.
Now it's like, okay, well, even him trying...
Have fun fighting The Miz.
Where does Samoa Joe go from here? Maybe against Roman Reigns. Maybe Roman puts Samoa Joe over. Because Roman lost against Strowman, yet I feel like he isn't damaged from that.
No, because we see him transitioning. It's like a storyline thing. This is just... It ended. And
it's like, okay, so... I guess...
We got something out of the fucking... the Roman Reigns match. This is just like... And then it ends, and then that's the end of it. We can't even have, like... Even if, like... If you even want to do this, just have Brock Lesnar lose this match, and then have him go back and like, oh, I want a rematch because he should do this bullshit. That would be justified.
I mean... Yeah, and I would be interested to see where how they try and fix this, or how they try and make sense of this. So anyway, guys, that was WWE Great Balls of Fire. I don't know.
Terrible name.
Terrible name, it's true. I don't know where I put this on a scale. I'm going to put it on mediocre with highlights.
That's the scale.
That's where it's going. It's not bad. It's not great.
Try and discover what that scale means.
It's mediocre with highlights.
It's bad ending plus.